Okay, I'm going to start recording. I'm just going to have to ask for the recording if you're alright with me videoing the interview.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Could you start by telling us your name, your age, and what your relationship is to the Koue Bokkeveld?
Yeah, okay, so I'm Johannes van der Merwe, Hannes for short, and I was born in the Koue Bokkeveld in 1952, which makes me virtually 73 years old right now. I grew up there on a farm and went to school in this district, primary and secondary school. And that's basically my link to the district and its history. My father was the owner of the farm since 1949, which he bought. And my mother also comes from a related family in the district, the Pinar family. So I had those links, and of course I'm a van der Merwe, which means that I'm related to basically all van der Merwes in South Africa, although the relationship becomes quite tenuous because the one van der Merwe came out in 1660, and I'm ninth generation of that family, and the person who was murdered at Oudenbeek on 2 February 1825 was my great-great-grandfather. So I'm directly descended from that particular event. And that I think is more or less. And then I can add that I've grown up, with the story of the event sort of hanging around.
Do you remember the first time you heard the story?
Oh, I must have been very young. I can't put a date on it, but I grew up with it. I was very young. My father, I have some documentation where the story was referred to that stems from the Van der Merwe festival, which was held in I've got to think now. I think I was 6 days old in 1952. It was held at the farm De Hoop in that was the farm owned by the first Van der Merwe in 1600s. And so that was where if at some certain point we used to have Van der Merwe jokes in South Africa. Everything, if there was a clownish joke that you wanted to make, you'd say it was Koue van der Merwe that it happened to. That actually started after that festival that they had, which was in 1952, as I say. And my father had corresponded with some of the family members that he'd picked up at that meeting because of the claim that they had to being related to the people involved in the Oudenbeek things, because there were all sorts of stories, nonsense stories through time, which I've actually collected, and I'm writing about that now. Among which was the story that particular people that during that event had hidden in the baking oven, and virtually every Van der Merwe family that had claimed a relationship to that claimed that their grandfather had actually been, or great grandfather had been, the one in the oven. which is it's not correct. So that's how long the story's been in my recollection, and then I got interested in it, and I started collecting material on it, especially the versions of how the story was told.
And how do you feel? Can you talk about your feelings related to the fact that this is a story about your own ancestor and people from your own family?
Yeah, I think my interest is primarily piqued by a little bit of more of a scientific and academic interest in it, rather than an emotional one, which would be, when you think about it being your family being in there. But then I'm a retired academic, so I tend to think that way, and I measure things rather unemotionally. So I don't have I don't tell the story the way I read it, because I read it rather dispassionately in some sense. And to me, it's more important that the true facts come out, because I know that it's been warped through many narratives that it came from. Look, I mean, it's a very difficult history, but I don't know whether I should speak about that now. The history of that period itself. It's something about which one is typically ambivalent, because it has all the elements in that with 200 years of developing morality and ethics, you look at things in its essence, and you can't agree with it. It's no things that were acceptable at the time. You know that it's no longer acceptable, and that applies to many things in life, I guess. So, I'm not. I understand the how history unravels, and I don't take a moral stand on anything of that type. I look at it rather, as I say, dispassionately and rationally, I guess.
And what do you feel the story means to or represents about the Koue Bokkeveld? What does it say about the Koue Bokkeveld?
Well, it basically says that it's a history that I think is fairly unique to it in some sense. Slavery was practiced throughout the old Cape Province. So it's not unique as far as that's concerned. I'm not sure. I think it has rather broader meaning rather than very specific to the Koue Bokkeveld itself. I don't think that the fact that it took place there has anything to do with specifically the people in there or the particular region. I think it just happened there. It could have happened elsewhere, and in fact it did happen elsewhere, as we know, and it certainly threatened to happen in other places as well, which you can, which is sort of, I think, logical of a system as it existed at the time.
Mm. And as we know, today marks 200 years since the uprising, and recently there has been increased attention paid to this event. Do you think that this is the right time to be doing this? Or do you think that anything has changed to allow it to happen now?
I don't know exactly why the commemoration has taken 200 years to take place. I don't, it's been written about for probably about, as far as I could gather, 120 odd years. I don't think the general spirit in the country was in some sense ready for dealing with this type of thing that could be very divisive and is bound still to be, I think. And people like communities like round numbers. So 200, yeah, I think that is quite heavy in terms of triggering this thing. In terms of how it's, I think that's what you asked, how it's being done. I'm quite surprised that it panned out the way it did. Well, I'm not really surprised because I think, as we've heard this morning, the people who feel involved in it, from the let's say the slave heritage side, have adopted a rather accommodating stance on it. So far we've only seen their side of it. The event did nothing from the, let's call it the other side, if there is another side in it. So, and I go by the slogan that they've developed for it, the remember, heal, grow. I think that's a very healthy way to go about it. And I think, if I've lived in the Koue Bokkeveld, so I've known conditions over the past, at least cognitively over the past 60 years, and I've seen this type of development in the conditions and the relationships among people. I've seen that coming over that time. So I think it's a healthy way of getting everybody to deal with a shared history.
How do you think we can, because you say that a lot of the that there's been input from people who with enslaved heritage, and how do you think we can better bring in other perspectives, or what do you think people from a white farming perspective can learn by engaging with this story?
Well, I think what you've heard there is that they have, to a large extent, already built a different history. There's a different history in the making, and it's been coming quite a while. If you look at the initiatives like PALS, for instance, if you're familiar with that, you've seen how that works. That's to me, that's a model that can be emulated in South Africa, more broadly speaking. So I personally, I think the Koue Bokkeveld farming community is on the forefront of working past the less positive things in history. Look at me playing that down.
And why do you feel that this story is an important story to tell?
Well, I wouldn't want to make too much of it. I think that sometimes angles are taken on it that might be detrimental to societal development, if you like.
What kind of angles would those
Because
be?
if it leads to people to blame shifting and to entitlement and things like that, which we've seen elsewhere.
What type of angles would those be?
You mean entitlement?
Yeah.
In
so
other words,
when you're talking about-
where basically I say, well, I'm in a particular position, and since I didn't, it's not my fault. The world now owes me something, and that I don't have to do anything. Okay. That would be highly detrimental to any society, I think. If confronting, you can't ignore history. So if commemorating events like this means that you are confronted with reality and the truth about things, because contrary to many other historical interpretations, there is a truth here. Certain things are true. Those things happened. It's been documented and it's there. The reasons for why and the meaning of it, that's where interpretation comes in, and we can confront that. I don't think that's maybe in the past we didn't want to, or it was when it was confronted or interpreted, it came from particular viewpoints, and those viewpoints have shifted over time. So and of course the participants in the process shifted over time. So those are all positives that I think come from this. I wouldn't make too much of it. I wouldn't want to put this event and its commemoration centerpiece to all development, and everybody must now bow down and do this, that, and the other thing. That I think is would not be healthy. But simply just confronting reality and truth, that's part of life, I guess.
And what would you like people outside of the Koue Bokkeveld to know or understand by engaging with this event?
Yeah, it's it's a little bit like asking, what do you want people to know about history, and especially when it becomes the history of a particular place, because I'm a geographer, so to me there's a certain determinism in place, in space, in the reality of environment, the conditions, the natural conditions under which history developed and got established and then progressed from. So there, I think there is a certain uniqueness in terms of location. Certainly the historical development and the challenges of developing what we see when we go through there now have been different to other parts of the country, if you like. So as far as shedding a light on that, I like that, because as I say, I'm a geographer. I like exposing areas for what they are, introducing areas for what they are, And the history of an area is part of that area and its people. So I guess in that sense one can learn from what happened, and in some sense why it happened there. I'm not sure why it happened there, but it's at least let's call it a campfire around which multiple people and communities can sit and see if they can see eye to eye better. It's an opportunity, really, I think.
I think that's a really good point to close my interview on. Thank you so much.
Okay, right. I hope that you find something useful in there somewhere.
I will.